What is oscillation? Oscillation is taken from Latin words oscillare, which meaning a swing. Oscillation is actually the motion of back and forth, or just like a swing motion, which is called an oscillation. And we can define as oscillation is the repetition of back and forth movement of a matter between two position or two state when some object is performing the motion, and such a motions which repeated back and forth, up and down, or through and through. So such a motion is called oscillation. And the objects which can perform such a motions are which are repeating back and forth, that is called an oscillator. So what is oscillator? An oscillator is a device that exhibits oscillatory motion around equilibrium point. For example, the pendulum of clock and the spring motions. These objects are many other objects which can doing such an actions, that is called an oscillator, because the pendulum moving back and forth about its mean position. Similarly, when a mass is attached to spring, it's also oscillating up and down about its mean position, so that is called an oscillator, and the action is called oscillatory motion. What is oscillatory motion? The back and forth motion of an object about its mean position is called oscillatory motion. So the actions of that object which is moving or which are repeating about mean position, that is called oscillatory motions, and the objects are the matters which can doing such an action, that is called an oscillator, and the process is called oscillation. For example, the motion of simple pendulum and mass attached to spring against the example of the oscillatory motion. There are two types of oscillatory motion. Number first, linear oscillatory motion. Linear oscillatory motion is also called translatory oscillatory motion. It means that when an object performing translatory or linear motions and also the object is repeating, that is called linear translatory motion. In linear motion, the objects move back and forth, left or right, or up or down, up and down. But the objects in linear motion, so then motion is called linear oscillatory motion. For example, the vibration of string. When string is plucked to some support and applied force on it, on the other end of the string will start oscillation. But this oscillation is linear oscillatory motion. Similarly, the motion of the tuning fork. When tuning fork is struck to rubber pad, its prong start oscillation, but this oscillation is linear oscillatory motion. Similarly, the motion of waves which are produced in water, the wave is also moving up and down about its mean or equilibrium position, and that is linear oscillatory motion. The second type is circular oscillatory motion. In circular motion, the object moves left to right but in circular form. Or we can say that when an object in circular motion are performing in circular motion in such a way that that object is moving back and forth or move up or down about its equilibrium position, then the motion is called circular oscillatory motion. For example, the motion of pendulum. When pendulum is plugged to some support and then oscillate it, so the pendulum is moving back to forth about mean or equilibrium position, but the motion is in circular motion. Similarly, the motion of the wheel is also rotating around its axles back and forth, but the motion is circular. Similarly, the motion of swing is also the example of the circular oscillatory motion. There is another types of motion related to oscillation, which is called periodic motion. What is periodic motion? The periodic actually the oscillations which repeat at regular interval of time. There is a little difference between the oscillation and periodic. In periodic, we can say that such an oscillations which are periodically repeated, at regular interval of time. But the oscillation may be periodic or may not be periodic. So we can say that each oscillatory motion is always periodic motion. But it is not necessary that each periodic motion is oscillatory motion. For example, the motion of car wheel is periodic because it is repeated at regular interval of time, but it is not oscillatory. It is a not oscillatory motion. Whereas the motion of pendulum, which are attached to some support, is oscillatory motion, but also it is a periodic motion because it is repeated at a regular interval of time. So each oscillatory motion, each periodic motion may be oscillatory motion, but every oscillatory motion is not a periodic motion. There is also a little difference between the oscillation and vibration. The oscillation and vibration is also have some difference, and the difference is that when an object is moving at high frequency, then the object is said to be vibration. For example, when we take a steel strap and vibrate it through our hand, that is called as a vibration because its frequency is very high. But when the objects have low frequency, it is said to be oscillating. For example, the pendulum motion, the swing motions, which are oscillating with low frequency. So the difference between the oscillation and vibration is that the frequency, one have most highest frequency and the other have lowest frequency. So thank you students. If you have liked my videos, please subscribe it for more update.